Hey everyone, today's going to be a different type of video, one that's a whole lot more personal than what I normally go into. With my channel and all of my social media, you're always seeing a filtered version of my life. I'm presenting to you the version of me that I want you to see and leaving out all the stuff that I don't want you to see. I mean, when it comes to my videos, when I sit down to shoot a review, I'll shoot 30 minutes of footage and then I'll whittle it down to about 6 minutes. Some of my rankings, I'll shoot over an hour of footage and then you see an 18-minute video. And all the parts where I messed up, I cut all of that out. I hide it with footage on top of it. And so it just looks like I can talk real smooth throughout an entire video. On Instagram, I'll have my wife take a whole bunch of pictures of me, and then I'll pick the one that I think looks the best, put some filters on it to present to you the version of me that I want you to see. And along those same lines, it's very tempting for all of us to compare ourselves to the people that we see on the internet and the people that we look up to. But really, if you look at my videos, my channel, my Instagram, and compare yourself to those videos, images, you're not really comparing our two lives. You're comparing my highlight reel to your blooper reel. You're looking at the best stuff that I wanted to share, comparing it to all the stuff in your life that you don't want to share. And, some of that's just the inherent nature of social media. It wouldn't be very interesting if I posted bad pictures of myself with poorly lit, just sitting on my couch doing nothing. But at the same time, it's important to occasionally call that out and get to the reality of things that we're all very broken people. We all have complex histories. And today seemed like a good day specifically for me to do that, as today is 4 years of sobriety for me. 4 years with no slip-ups, relapses, lapses, 4 years without consuming any alcohol. For a number of years, I was very much deep in alcoholism. And a lot of people, because before it became public that I was struggling with alcohol, I was a pastor. And so I had a very good reputation. And then because afterwards, I haven't slipped up any, people have never really perceived me as that person. They saw me before it and they saw me after it. But there wasn't the moment where they saw me really in the middle of it for the most part. So a lot of people have, at different times been like, oh, you were a pastor, so when you say you had a drinking problem, that means you could drink a beer at night. Like, no, when I say I had a drinking problem, I mean just like a real legit drinking problem, and true alcoholism, the insanity that goes with it, that like my life had turned into a series of lies to cover up how much I was drinking so that I wouldn't get caught so that I could keep drinking. It was crazy. It didn't make any sense. It defied any sort of reason. It didn't produce happiness. It wasn't with other people. It was very much this secret thing that I was dealing with, this thing that I was in the middle of, real alcoholism. And, if the movie came out earlier this year called The Way Back, where Ben Affleck is drinking in just points in time that makes absolutely no sense. And the way that's what I was in the middle of. And today is four years sober for me. And so, on the back end of all of my struggles, I've been lucky enough to now have a platform. And it's just very important to me to try and tell my story, because when I was in the middle of all of it, I felt so alone. Like I was the one that was going through this. No one else had experienced this before. And just none of that was true. None of that was reality. That was my perception. My belief legitimately was, if I come forward and say what's going on, it's going to ruin my life. And there's not going to be a future. I believed that because it would just kill my reputation. I didn't know what my career would be. I didn't know how it would make money. It would bring shame on my wife's family and it'd be too much to bear. And the reality is, summer of 2016, when I started my YouTube channel, I didn't have a job. I was in not full time. I was in an intensive outpatient treatment program. So June 5th, basically stop drinking, come forward. And then I didn't have a job anymore. And I didn't get a job for about 4 more months. I couldn't go back. I had been a pastor. I couldn't really go back into that career path at that point in time. And I needed treatment. So I was in this program where I was going for, I don't remember the exact number, but 15 hours per week to this nighttime program, sitting around with a room of other addicts, working through our issues. And in the middle of that phase of life, with all the extra free time, reflection, wanting the escape from everything I was dealing with, I went to go to a date night to go see Ghostbusters with my wife, who didn't like me very much at the time for a good reason, and just decided to post a video on a dormant YouTube channel that I had. That's the origin of Sean Chandler Talks About. I frequently tell the Ghostbusters story, but the full context is that I had just burned my life, my career, my relationships to the ground. And I was just sitting at home doing nothing except pondering, how on earth did I end up in such a bad place? And I returned to the thing that I've always loved, movies. And that's the origin of Sean Chandler Talks About. But to kind of give you my full story, to kind of give the context to everything, because everyone, depending if you're watching this and you just are interested in my story, if you're watching this and maybe it's new information for you, I've told this story many times before, but maybe you're newer and so this is new information for you, or you're someone that you're in the middle of addiction. Hearing other people's stories, I know that helped me. And as I started saying some of the stuff that was going on, or hearing what other people were going through, I went, wait, I'm not alone. Other people did that crazy stuff too. Because addiction really is a disease in the mind that messes you up. But anyway, to kind of just walk you through my story, I grew up with an alcoholic father. He's a very successful businessman, retired when he was 45, not because he had an inheritance. Both of his parents outlived him by 10 years. And like 10 years after he died, they died. And so, I mean, he just through hard work, wise choices, retired when he was 45 years old, but he was a severe alcoholic. He was just very functioning. And that was essentially his curse, is that he could continue to be productive while being incredibly destructive to himself and his relationships. And growing up, I didn't realize this, but as I got into my early 20s, I realized that it was also an abusive household. There was some physical abuse, and not so overt that, like, you know, he'd punch us in the face. It wasn't that, but he would go on these drunken rants and he would do things that were physical that I would call abuse. If anyone came up to me and said, "Hey, this is what my dad just did," I would go, "That's called abuse. We need to call the police." And he quit when I was in high school because he went to see a doctor, and the doctor told him, if you don't quit drinking, you're not going to see your son graduate. So he quit for a little bit. And then a year and a half later, his third marriage fell apart. So he's living alone, no job, and literally by himself all day. So he just started drinking again in the midst of another divorce. And that essentially turned into the path where he passed away. And so about a year before he died, when I was 19, I moved in with him. So we had a little condo next to a golf course, and I had a room, and he lived upstairs. And about 4 or 5 months into when I was living with him, he started clearly not being very healthy. And I mean, he would just drink all day long, and he was very reflective. So it was kind of nice that he was kind of talking to me about a bunch of stuff he never talked to me about before, but very clearly not healthy. And he was always a really skinny guy, like 150 pounds. I don't know the exact number. And I noticed he started to get a gut. And I literally thought to myself, oh, someday I might have to worry about my weight a little bit. That was my literal thought, because I didn't know anything about how the body transforms when it starts to die. And so that was, I believe, December of 2001, I believe, is when that happened. And by May 11th, 2002, he was dead. And it kind of unfolded very quickly like that, of like, oh, well, he needs help for this. Oh, this is getting worse, and this is getting worse. And it just kept snowballing very quickly, and his mental state deteriorated. And when I was 20 years old, my dad died. And so up to that point in time, I'd never had a drink. because I was underage, pretty well behaved, and had seen his example, so it wasn't something I was interested in. Then when I was a couple of years after this, there was an incident that happened involving one of my friend's brother that was very traumatic, and there was some maybe attempted suicide, maybe there was a freak accident, and his brother was in a coma, and so he just showed up at my place with some alcohol, and was like, "Hey man, let's just drink this away." And at that moment, like, I'm over 21, I'm safely at my home. If there's an excuse to drink, this is it. Like this, I'm a grown up. So that was the first time I ever got drunk. 21, 22 years old, over tragedy. And that started the pattern in my life, that as I've been able to reflect back, like, how did things get so bad? It was that it kind of started with that mechanism by which it was introduced. This was a bad enough day, therefore it excuses this action. And, I didn't drink again until like the next funeral. I was at a funeral for some family members, and then, was at a party, and then there's some drinking there, but it was always spaced out because I'm very aware my dad was an alcoholic. I probably have those genes. I better not drink too much. And so if anyone looked at my life, they would say, this guy doesn't drink very often, and maybe he drinks too much when he drinks, but doesn't drink all that often. And essentially stayed the pattern until I'd been married for 1 year. And 1 week prior to 1 year of marriage, our apartment got broken into. And I mean, we like cleaned out. We left town for the weekend, came home, went to our back door and opened it, and the chain lock snapped. I was like, wait a minute, how could we lock the chain lock leaving? What is going on here? So we looked through in, and we could just see everything was destroyed, and just feeling violated. And I had this huge, massive DVD collection, as you can imagine, and they just cleaned most all of it out. I stole my guitar. I mean, just really heartbreaking stuff. So we got a hotel for the next week or so, and just drank. It was Christmas break. I was in school and just drank the whole time. Once again, it was a bad enough event, stressful enough, so I drank. So jump forward a little bit after that. Didn't become a problem. It was okay. Processing, drinking, now moving forward. And I didn't see the pattern yet in all of this, and graduated. I was going to Bible college and got a position at a church, and a bunch of things went really great about all of it. It progressed really quickly, and I was hired in one level and promoted because they liked what I was doing. And, so it was all seeming great. And then there was some behind the scenes church stuff that went down that was some of the most stressful stuff that I've ever been through. And it wasn't directly related to me, but hurt people. And so then I became the target of some stuff that was like, you liked me 2 weeks ago, but this thing unrelated to me, you learned information. I don't have anything to do with that. And so it became stressful, and the stuff I was a part of like grew really fast. And there's a lot of stress related to it. And so it kind of turned into like Sunday nights I would drink to unwind, because it was like these long days with lots of stress, trying to be super energetic. I'm an introvert, so being extrovert guy. Sunday mornings, it was Sunday nights. I had all this stuff going on. So then I added something in that was a weekly rhythm of drinking at nighttime. Jump forward a couple more years, and kind of more years of tragedy. Or a year of tragedy started, I believe, December of 2012. And it was all kind of in this window of time, slow steps. But and it was like 2009 is when kind of maybe the weekly night, Sunday night, part of that rhythm, once a week doing that. And just slow little steps between them and the end of 2012 of making unwise choices, stuff that if anyone else that doesn't have alcoholism in their genetics, it wouldn't set off red flags, but I do. And so I should have known better. And I remember a specific day, walking into the kitchen to get a drink, and I've been drinking just a little bit. And then the way our room was designed, you could look from our kitchen into our bedroom. And I remember opening the freezer door a specific way to hide the view of my wife, because I wanted to get like one or two more drinks. And I didn't want her to know that, because I didn't want her to think I was drinking too much. And I had this thought, wait, this is what alcoholics do. And that was the first time that language kind of came into my head, but I didn't make any changes. Once again, because if anyone else looked at my life, I could rationalize it like, oh, I can just step back. I'm not that far. But I was taking all the steps to get right up to the edge of wisdom right up to the edge of going over the cliff. And the cliff happened. The cliff collapsed December of 2012, where it just kicked off a year straight of not just tragedy, but extreme tragedy. So in that December, there was a girl at the local high school that committed suicide and, shot herself. And she was popular, 16, prominent family in the community. And so it really shook the community. And they called the local pastors, myself included, to go in to do frontline counseling at the high school. And that is not my strong suit, to carry that much of a burden for other people, especially not a stranger. And I don't have extensive counseling training or anything like that. So in and of itself, that was a big toll. And there's some other things that were kind of going along that just compounded the stress of all of that. And then we went into 2013, and the way some things restructured, it was just a very stressful work-wise when it came to church world, work-wise, very stressful year where I was just overworked. And compounded to that, it was just a string of deaths. And it was just a random guy from the church that I knew that died in a car accident, and just things like that, just random, the stuff of life that just comes out of nowhere. That we were just at band practice, and then I met his funeral 5 days later. No rhyme or logic to it, anything. And then one of my students committed suicide, from my youth group. And he'd been in my small group, and I was at his parents' home in their living room very soon after it took place, and talking with his brother. And it was just one thing on top of the other. And as I mentioned earlier, I'd established a pattern of, when hard times happen, this is a good enough excuse to drink. And so when you have December, January, February, March, April, May, just series after series of those gut punches, and I was already standing on the edge of all of this, and I just full-blown went over and kind of went into alcoholic mode. Not I'm drinking as a reaction to something foolishly, not I'm drinking a little bit too much, but I am out of control and my body just needs alcohol. It's a compulsion. And I don't want anyone to know what I'm doing, so then I need to hide what I'm doing, which compounds all of it, builds on top of it. And that's kind of where things really started to get out of control. And when full-blown alcoholic mode, about, I guess April 2014, this is right after my first daughter was born, Chloe. My wife kind of had I'm fed up moment, like, okay, you got to get help. And okay, I'll get help. I'll get help. And started going to Alcoholics Anonymous, but I was there, but wasn't participating. And I'd go 2 months sober, and then I'd relapse, and then I'd go back again, and had a sponsor for a little bit. All kinds of back and forth of trying to do stuff, but without really doing the things I needed to do to get the help that I needed, which was, for me, that needed to be willing to do whatever to get the help I needed. This whole time I was too worried about my reputation. That's what stopped me from getting help, talking to people, getting anything that could have slowed this down, required me to be honest with the people that were actually in my life. And I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do the thing that I knew could help. And so then I'd have success, but the danger of something like addiction is that, in something like alcohol, whenever you have a relapse, whenever you take a month off, 2 months off, and then you go back into it, you don't return to the first time you ever drank. You go straight back into full-blown, however much you were drinking before, just your whole body just kicks into addict mode, and it gets crazier every single time. And so this 2-year window where I was quitting, stopping, starting, things started to just spiral out of control really fast, because it would just get so bad so fast. And that's also, I didn't know this at the time, but alcohol withdrawal and quitting drinking alcohol is one of the most dangerous things to withdraw from. It just jacks up your system to no end. And people don't know that. They don't realize that because drinking is so common. But most people can do it more responsibly than an alcoholic. And so it was just starting to jack me up seriously as I, 3 months off and then just full blown straight back into it. And then 2015, I had a pretty good little stretch there where I really did a good job for about 6 months quitting. But it was a dry drunk. It's a phrase that you're probably not familiar with if haven't gone through addiction counseling or treated for addiction. But it's like your mind hasn't been fixed. You're just not drinking, but it's still just as hazy. It's still all the chaos because the addiction is more than just the thing you're addicted to. It really messes with your brain a bit. And so I was, while not drunk, still living in that mode and not healthy. And around this time, it was kind of decided I was probably going to move on from the church I was at, but it wasn't public information. So I was looking for other jobs and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wasn't really healthy. And eventually this kind of just led into kind of the final window where I just spiraled out of control. Which led up to 4 years ago. And I just, as I said, it's always this back forth. You start up right where you're at before. And so if you have big window of success followed immediately by massive relapse, you really jack yourself up. And so I just really dramatically started to not just spiral, but I was just crashing, going down. But I was a youth pastor for this time, or it was a youth pastor. And so it started to become very apparent to the people around me. I'd done a good job of being a functioning alcoholic for a long time and keep being out of control, but being able to control just enough moments so that it was okay, it wasn't visible to people. It wasn't something perceived by people. I was able to control just enough. And then in this last little window, all the control was gone. And I mean, really embarrassed myself in some places. And during the worst week of the year, it was like the biggest event of the youth ministry of the year. Right before it, I was just crashed and burned kind of publicly. And people noticed, really noticed. So someone came to confront me at this event. I mean, this is literally the worst week of the year, probably for something like this to go down. It's like, Sean, were you drunk yesterday? Oh no, of course not. You sure? Because I've seen you weird. I've known you 7 years, 8 years. I've seen you very weird. I've never seen that before. I was like, oh no, I've just been tired and denied it. And then after a day and a half of denying it, he's like, dude, I don't know if you're lying to me or not. All I know is that whatever it was so unhealthy that if you need to go get sleep to get back to normal, you need to go home. Okay. So I went back home and my wife's like, why are you home? Thought I was drunk the other day. She goes, were you drunk? Oh, yeah. Yes, I was. So in her mind, I hadn't been drinking for 7-8 months, whatever the number was. She wasn't aware that I had kind of had this collapse over the last month or so, or whatever the date was. And so she's like, all right, I told you I was done before. I told you, we're going forward. I was like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. And she's like, no, this is done. We're not doing this anymore. So she says that, and I was like, no, we can't do that right now. We'll mess everybody else up. So that night I went to go to bed, and I just started in the middle of this moment of what have I done? Start researching symptoms of alcohol withdrawal and thinking through my experience of watching my dad collapse. Started to realize I was starting to have some very serious symptoms related to this start-stop thing that I was doing, and it was leading to very bad withdrawal. And had that enough of a moment of wait, okay, do I care more about trying to keep this lie up a little bit longer, or is it time to just take the Band-Aid off? Do I care more about being healthy than I do about looking healthy? Because I'm not healthy. No one's falling for this joke anymore. And so basically I kind of decided at 5 a.m, Band-Aid's coming off. I literally called my mom. Mom, I'm going to drop my kids off at your place. I'm going into an ER to make sure that I'm healthy and that I'm sending in a letter to the church about what's going on. She's like, oh, okay. And that's what I did. So then 4 years ago today, in many ways, kind of the worst day of my life. And I've had a lot of really bad days because there's things that were tragedies, but there were things caused by other people. And this was, I brought tragedy onto the people I loved and cared about the most and hurt them. And that's something I always have to own to, that it's not just that it was a bad day for me. It really had bad ramifications that hurt, caused work, made a lot of people have to have a lot of hard questions because of choices that I made and the secrecy that I kept certain things. But it was also the start of a new life for me. And in that moment, I thought it was over. I thought this is it. There's no future. Like, I don't know what my career will be. How could life get better after this? Because it's done. I've burned it all to the ground. I've burned all my bridges. What else is there? And in the one hand, there was truth to that in the side that I did burn a lot of bridges, but it left out the fact that there's grace, there's forgiveness, and there's second chances if you're willing to change. So a lot of people have asked me, like, since I've told this story, a lot of people have messaged me kind of like, what's your advice, your tips for how do you kind of like stop drinking? And if you're just someone that you're a college student that goes to too many parties, I think that's probably more of a social problem, most likely. I mean, it could be more than that. But like if you really think that you have a problem, the simple answer is, and I'm going to go into Bible mode and quote some Bible verses, but God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. And even if you're not a churchy person, what that means is, like, if you think I can fix myself, you're probably going to run into a brick wall. That's probably not going to work very well. If you care more about what people think about you, if you think you've got all the answers, you probably don't have a lot of answers in this area. You're not going to fix yourself. The simple fact of the matter is that, like, whatever led to this moment where you need help, where you are broken, indicates you can't do this on your own. You probably have been trying to do it on your own for too long. But God gives grace to the humble. What does a humble person do? A humble person admits that they've messed up. If you want to use a church word that they've sinned, they seek help. They turn to others. They turn, I'm a religious person, they turn to God and they say, I can't do this, but I know that you can. And so a humble person knows that they can't do it on their own and they need the help of others, and they're willing to look bad to get the help that they need. So what's the secret? I can't give you a secret that's like this 1, 2, 3, 4 as to how you can go 4 years without slipping up the way that I did. I'll just say that it feels to me like a act of God, that I was willing to humble myself, and then God worked in my life through his grace, forgave my sins, healed past wounds, and then has given me the strength not to relapse. And how did I tap into that? I submitted myself to others is what I did. I said, I can't fix myself. I've tried that for 2 years. It really didn't work. I'm going to do the complete opposite. And I just went to the church and I said, okay, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to leave the church, or do you want me to stay here? You want me to stay? Okay. What do you want me to do? These are the things they said they wanted me to do. I will do those things. And so that's what happened, is I just stopped thinking I could fix myself and trusted other people and trusted God. And the church I worked at is still the church that we attend now and that I serve at. And that's it. It's stop trying to fix yourself and realizing that that's not the solution. And just as, like I said, as a Christian, I think that that's kind of at the core of the human experience, is realizing that all of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Any Christian you meet that's self-righteous and looking down on people, they've missed the whole point. The whole point is that all of us have sinned. All of us have fallen short of the glory of God. And all of us need a savior. And that's at the core of my belief system. And as a pastor, I taught that constantly, but I thought I could fix myself in this one area. And the reality was I just needed to embrace the thing that I had taught so many people for so many years. And that's where life change happened for me. I would say that that's kind of at the core of the start of the Christian walk is that surrendering to God and admitting you're a sinner in need of Jesus. And it's also the daily thing that I think as a believer is what helped me to, not me, but to no longer have alcohol in my life, to have that as a thing that is a thing of the past now. And hopefully it remains there forever, but that's at the core of it, humility and surrender and having community around you. The reason I share all of this, and I know I went into preacher mode for a little bit there, but that's my story. That's my truth, whatever language you want to use for that. I can't tell you a different answer than the one that I experienced. And my experience is that God changes lives. I don't change myself. I don't fix myself. But I say all of this because I was so alone. I was such a mess. And even so, like, I have got a large audience of teenagers now and people that kind of look up to me as kind of the family role model guy. I was in a horrible place for a long time. And I want people to know that even people that look healthy on the outside sometimes are in a really bad place and they need a lot of help. And if you're in the middle of it, seek the help that you need. And maybe I can, if you message me on Instagram, I can give you a little bit of guidance, but the reality is it's got to be there in your life. It's got to be the people that know you, that can hold you accountable day to day, that when they see you going off course, they can bring you back in. It has to be something that's the hard steps. I don't know where you're at as you're watching this. Maybe you're someone that's in the middle of really struggling with your own demons, or maybe you're just someone that wants to pursue your own dreams. I just hope that my story can help you or inspire you in some way. Because when I say I was at rock bottom when I started my YouTube channel, I absolutely mean that. I was even embarrassed to tell anyone that I had started it because I'd burned so many bridges and I didn't want them to be mad at me for doing something so silly when I had created so much chaos in my life, in my family's lives, and in some of their lives as well. 4 years later, or 2.5 years into it, I was able to turn kind of my little hobby into a full-time career. Coming out of literally little ashes of the life I'd burned down, was able to kind of invent a dream career where I worked for myself talking about movies. Here we are 4 years later, or a year after that, 4 years since that day. And it's unbelievable the life that I kind of have right now. And hopefully that story can inspire you. The simple fact that transformation is possible. People can change by the grace of God, and your transformation, your worst mistake can be the story that helps someone else's life, and dreams absolutely can come true. Thank you guys so much for watching, hearing kind of my story, and I truly hope that it could help you in some way or inspire you to be your best version of yourself. Keep talking movies too much.